the words of the Master. This week, we're going to talk about the healing at Cana. The healing at Cana. And let's read first John chapter 4. John chapter 4, verses 46 down through 54. John chapter 4, verse 46 down through 54. Let's get that up on the screen here. Okay, go ahead and read that.
Then Yeshua came again to Cana of Galilee, where he had made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capharnaum. When he heard that Yeshua had come from Yehuda into Galilee, and he went to him and was asking him to come down and heal his son, for he was about to die. Yeshua then said to him, "If you people do not see signs and wonders, you do not believe at all." The nobleman said to him, "Master, come down before my child dies." Yeshua said to him, "Go, your son lives." And the man believed the word that Yeshua spoke to him and went. And while he was going down, his servants met him and reported, saying, "Your son lives." He then asked from them the hour in which he became better, and they said to him, "Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the inflammation left him." Then the father knew that it was the same hour in which Yeshua said to him, "Your son lives," and he himself believed, and all his household. Again, this was the second sign Yeshua did when he came from Yehuda into Galilee.
All right. Okay, very good. So, Yeshua here, dealing with the words of the Master here, Yeshua doesn't have much to say, but there is a lot that actually was said in the little bit that he did say. So let's go back up and look at a few things. If we go back up to verse 46, we see where it says in 46, Yeshua came again to Cana of Galilee, where he made the water into wine. So he's back in this place here in Galilee. And so when we think about, you able to put on there, can you see where that little map is? Put that map up on the screen. Should be down in the, yes, very good. I think if you put it, if you hit, yes, keep it there, but I think for over there, I think there's a picture down in the open files over there. I want to pay attention to, if we can get that up there, I don't know if you can, it should be open. If you minimize that and open up the thing there. Yes, right there. Okay, so it's interesting when we look at the kind of layout here of Israel. Israel kind of is divided up at the time of Messiah. It's divided up really in kind of three sections, right? You have Judea, which is the southernmost part. Samaria, which would kind of be that bluish part there, and then Galilee, which would be that light brownish part. And you notice there's, various cities within each section there. And so we talked about kind of a little bit when we talked about the woman at the well who was from Samaria, where Yeshua was, right? And he stayed there some days and he talked to the people, and many people believed there in Samaria the words that he spoke. But you notice when we look over in the verse that we read, where it says that Yeshua came up from Judea into Galilee. It's interesting when we look at the map here. To get to Galilee, it's like you got to come through Samaria, and the text says that he came up from Judea, which is true, but he came up through Samaria in order to get to Galilee, right? If you can see that. It's interesting that, that whole area is just kind of, even in the text, is overlooked, right? Because if you come up to Galilee, you got to come through Samaria. Like, you can't not come up through it. But the text says that he came up from Judea, right? Interestingly enough. But when we think about Galilee, actually, what's it called? The population is similar to Samaria in that Galilee, there was a lot of mixed people there. Mixed people. Because you're talking about, again, if we go back in time, Samaria, Galilee, this is the northern kingdom, right? And so the people that were there were overtaken. The 10 tribes dispersed and intermixed. And so when we think about Samaria, those people held a particular tradition, but it was really different than that of what we'll call the real Israelite-ish traditions. But Galilee, again, looking at the map, even if we say that the population was similar to the Samaria, it's more of a Israelitish customs and things that went on there. So even though you have kind of this mixed people, that was really Israel. But it's interesting, even in some of the texts where it mentions Galilee, it calls Galilee Galilee of the Gentiles.
It was really the biblical context.
Huh?
They edited out Samaria names.
Oh,
The
right.
biblical context.
Yeah.
Context.
Right. They edited him out, right? Because he came up from Samaria. In the context of the scriptures, the last thing that happened was what happened in Samaria.
Yeah.
But they want to say he came up from Judea,
Yeah.
right? Because of this relationship with the peoples. But I just wanted to bring up that the fact that when you think about solely just the population, the type of people, it's really the same people, right? Is there a mixture of people, but the northernmost part, which was Galilee, kind of held to the particular traditions that are more in line with those in Judea, more so than Samaria, where they're able to keep their kind of credibility in terms of who they are. All of this is important because when we think about the next part of the first verse, there was this certain nobleman, right, whose son was sick in Capernaum, right? So a nobleman is like a regal person, right? He's someone, he could be a king, he could be someone connected to a king. And so when we think about Galilee, and remember that the population was kind of this particular way, it don't specifically tell us what nobleman this was, who this was. A lot of the commentators say that this is not the Roman soldier of another story that we'll talk about at another time, but there's another story where he goes up to this Roman soldier. This here is a nobleman, so he could be someone that's connected to Rome and Caesar and be a nobleman, or he could be somebody that's connected to the Herod, right? He could be connected to the Jewish kind of king figure that Israel had at the time. It's non-specific. But I think that when we look at kind of the context of what is showing us, I think that it's probably more so, I would say, someone who was more of the Israelite background, was probably part of his his royalty, as opposed to being like connected to a Roman person. And I'm saying that because of the way that Yeshua deals with this person, as if there's kind of something that is expected of him. There's no reason for Yeshua to expect anything from a Roman soldier, right? But when we look at, what this nobleman does, he looks for Messiah, and he's looking for a miracle. And so if we remember, let's go back to John 3 and 2. If we go back to the previous chapter, John 3 and 2, and see why Yeshua is being sought after.
John chapter 3, verse, are you ready? Yeah? Okay. It says, "This one came to Yeshua by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim, for no one is able to do these signs you do if Elohim is not with him."
Okay, so there's kind of this recurring idea that we see with Messiah, where the things that he does, people are expecting, Yeshua even, I would say, is expecting for people to respond this way, as to expect for there to be a connection between these miracles and the fact that he's from Elohim. The things that he does points to the fact that he is from Elohim. So that was the thought of Nicodemus, but it's also the thought of this nobleman, which is another reason why we could think about him being someone that's connected to Herod, as opposed to being someone that's connected to Caesar, because he has a particular idea of, he's doing these particular things, he must be from Elohim. And so between the teaching, and the wisdom that comes from Yeshua and his miracles, there's a word of mouth that's spreading, and the fact that he's from Elohim is the only explanation here, right? And so when we see back over in verse 47, when he goes up to Messiah, he says to him, come down and heal my son. And then Yeshua has kind of a rebuke for the man, which is another reason why I'm saying that there has to be a reason, right? There's a particular expectation that Messiah has for this person that he's kind of lacking in. Where he says, read 48 again for us.
Yeshua said to him, if you people do not see signs and wonders, you do not believe at all.
Wait, does it really say you people?
He said you people on that one.
That's offensive in these days and times,
Yeah,
isn't it?
these
You
days.
people. Who you
Yeah.
calling you people?
Who you talking about? Yeah.
But he's kind of saying it like that, though. Messiah is, right? You should be believing, Messiah is saying, without seeing. He's wondering why Messiah is. Why is it that you need to see these signs so that you're able to believe? And when we look at this, it's a slight against the nobleman, but not only the nobleman, because he's, there's one guy there. Again, he says, but he's on this you people thing, right? So it's not only against him, but all the people that's like you, right? Where they are, that's a general statement towards the place where they are. They're in Galilee.
Where they got that good wine.
Right, because that was another thing that he did. Right, for this area, his miracle that he performed was this whole wine thing. But there's other things that he did down in Judea. But when you think about the Samaritans, comparatively speaking, now this is Yeshua coming out of Samaria, remember? Those people believed based on words with no miracles. Those people didn't need to see signs and wonders over there in Samaria. But this guy's like, come down here and heal my son, please. And Yeshua, he does the miracle, not the way that he wants him necessarily, but not without a slight adjustment to his thinking. Like you need to see a miracle. But it's interesting when we think about this kind of in the context of what is happening, where he's kind of judging almost these people in Galilee and even comparing them without saying it really to the Samaritans. When he says, except you people, what's it say? What's it say in that version? What does it say?
It says, Yeshua said to him, if you people do not see signs and wonders, you do not believe at all.
You do not believe at all unless you're able to see these signs and wonders. So they need a miracle in order to believe. Now, if we remember, believing, by the way, is kind of a big deal. It's kind of like the main thing that you got to be able to do is believe. But these people, for whatever reason, aren't able to do it outside of seeing miracles. And so the knowledge of Yeshua, for this individual, causes him, you could say it obviously sparks interest as to, wanting to know who Messiah is, who Yeshua is, I should say. At this time, they know he's from Elohim, maybe not necessarily Messiah, but at this point, is he wanting to find salvation for himself, or is this just a desperation, last resort thing to heal his son?
Probably not.
No spiritual significance, just the fact my son's dying, there's this guy, he does these miraculous things, it must be from Elohim. I'm just going to take him up here and see the Samaritan lady, she was able to have understanding. She went back with the message, the Messiah is here.
She's had a conversation.
But this guy, I mean, the noble man is doing a noble thing, I guess. He wants to save his son. But the only reason why he's going to Messiah is to, for this miracle. It has nothing to do with his soul. And so Messiah, being who he is, I'll do it. It's done. I don't gotta go down there. He performed a miracle. It's interesting that he did perform the miracle, but he wasn't present for it, and he didn't let the guy see it. Right? He had to go and find out about it.
It seemed like it was urgent too. Come down before my child dies.
Right. And again, if we think about the map, it's a little ways, right? They're way up in Galilee, and he's got to get down all the way back down over to where he was from. And so, he's trying to get Yeshua to go and do this thing. But I want to talk a little bit about what it is that Messiah sees that's lacking in this individual, and also the whole Galilee for that matter. Because when we think about the way that the Most High really presents himself, the Most High and Yeshua here, there's always these miraculous things that really kind of have to, I'm saying they have to happen because that's what they did, that are connected with kind of the story. Right? When we think about the Exodus from Egypt, right, there's miracles involved. Right? As kind of like the convincing kind of factors. Mount Sinai, there's miracles involved, right? They're literally hearing the voice of the Most High. That's kind of miraculous, I would say. But in both of those things and all of the other places that we find in the scriptures, these miraculous things do in fact happen, but something more has to happen in order for there to be kind of a real situation that happens. Even when we think about this whole thing that we see here with this nobleman, he does the thing. Yeshua says to him, go. He lives. Even at that, there is something that is required of that man, the whole trip that he has on his way back. Like, is he really alive? Did he really make it? Like, he is forced to have to believe what it is that Yeshua said to him. However, that was probably the longest trip of his life. While he's going from that one place to the next. So it's interesting that Yeshua chastises him first for lacking, and then he sends him away, which forces him to have to do the thing that he was lacking in. Have faith and believe. Which is so interesting. Yeshua caught him where he was slightly in a faithless type of a situation, and then he forces faith upon him. He forced faith upon him. Go ahead, he's good. Go back. Really, I guess if he was really, truly walking in faith, he could just went about his business of whatever he had to do in Galilee if he had it. Oh, he's cool? All right, then, cool. I ain't even got to hurry back then. Right? That would have been like, that would have been the ultimate of faith. Oh, okay, oh, for real? All right, well let's break bread then, or something like. But he goes back, and not only does he, when he goes back, right? He's like, you know, he's going back. People are coming back and meet him on his way back, saying that he's all good, and then he's like, well, when did he become all good? Right? It can't even be like
A minute before, a minute after.
yeah. And so they're giving him the time. It's like, oh yeah, that is the time that he said. Like, and so when we look at all of this, it causes us. Yeshua here is really teaching us this thing of faith. It's interesting when we kind of look at, kind of as we go through this whole thing here. You know, the last thing that we talked about was repentance. Right, the first kind of message that Messiah brings forth: repent. And then this very next thing that we see is him really dealing with this person's faith and lack thereof. I want to go over to Romans. Let's go over to the book of Romans. So we're talking about here faith. Let's go to Romans chapter 10. Because it's interesting as we think about kind of the difference. Yeshua brings it up without bringing it up. The difference between the people in Galilee and the Samaritans. The fact that he's able to speak words and those words be believed and people's lives be changed based on the things that he's saying. And these other people, it's like an extra step that you have to take. It's an extra step. Like the miracles aren't doing anything but causing you really to pay attention to the person. And then once you pay attention, now you can hear the words. But it's almost like another step that you can actually skip that step. It's an unnecessary step. It's necessary for those who are unbelieving. And it's interesting that we see when you deal with things that Yeshua is doing, he goes out and he does these things. When he has these massive crowds of people, you know, he'll perform miracles. But it's really only just to amass the crowds. But once he begins to speak, now we're getting to the meat and the proverbial potatoes over here. So let's look over at, I want to look at Romans chapter 10. Start reading there at read verses 1 and 2 there.
Truly, brothers, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is for deliverance. For I bear them witness that they have an adore for Elohim, but not according to knowledge.
Okay, it's interesting when we look over at this verse and we think about the fact that, you know, the apostle here is talking about Israel and their the fact that the Most High wants for Israel to experience deliverance. Deliverance, which, by the way, you know, in the Greek, the word literally means to rescue or salvation or to be saved. But the Hebrew equivalent of this word here is Yeshua, actually, which is salvation. But in verse 2, where it says that, as you just read, therefore I bear them witness that they have a zeal for Elohim. These people have this intense longing and desire for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. So in other words, their zeal is through ignorance, right? That's what it literally says, because if you lacking knowledge, that's ignorance, right? And so their zeal is actually according to ignorance. And so when we think about this idea here of not having a proper understanding. These people, Israel, who are supposed to be operating according to knowledge. They were given the oracles were given to Israel. But Paul's over here saying that these people, although zealous, although very desirous of the things of the Most High, they aren't able to actually understand the things that they're supposed to be understanding. And so when we think about Yeshua again, the way that he kind of brings a type of correction to this person from Galilee, who's someone who actually should have been acting a particular way and wasn't, he fits into this category as someone who has a zeal for Elohim, but not according to knowledge. And so when we think about, let's read some more. Let's read down verses 3 and 4.
For not knowing the righteousness of Elohim and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. For Messiah is the goal of the Torah unto righteousness to everyone who believes.
Okay, very good. So for not knowing Yeshua, we can just put Yeshua right there because Yeshua is actually the righteousness of Elohim. For not to know Yeshua and seeking to establish your own righteousness. Well, they weren't making up things to do. Right? They was doing the Torah. They weren't like making up their own standard of righteousness. But what that's actually trying to say there is seeking to establish their own righteousness by their own strength. Right? That becomes the issue, right? Put together with that Hebrews 8, 6 through 8. Because these people that Paul's talking about here, where it says not knowing the righteousness of Elohim and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of Elohim. They didn't subject themselves to Yeshua, who they didn't subject themselves to. Interestingly enough, when we think about the nobleman, where he goes to Messiah, he's forced to have to subject himself to Messiah. He's a nobleman. He's connected to royalty. And he has to come and submit himself to Messiah, to Yeshua, so that he's able to receive the things that he wants to receive. And so even in this situation that we see over in John, we're able to see kind of this process is given to us, right? But in general, generally speaking, we think about, and then Yeshua chastises these people for not having faith or lacking in their faith or not following the proper channels when he's just coming on the scene, but there's still kind of this process. But let's go over to Hebrews 8. Read Hebrews 8, 6 and 8.
But he has obtained a more excellent service, insomuch as he is also mediator for a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. For if the first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, he says, "See, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah a renewed covenant."
Okay, very good. So verse 8 says, finding fault with them. The fault was with the people. The fault was with the people because they were seeking their own righteousness. The fault was with the people because they were seeking righteousness through their own strength. The Most High gave the law. He said the law is perfect and it's spiritual. But if you're trying to do this spiritual thing and you're carnal, then there's an issue, right? It's a problem, right? And so, but the difference is I said the difference is that the Most High created a solution to this issue, which is Messiah. He said in verse 4 back in Romans chapter 10, Messiah is the goal of the Torah unto righteousness to everyone who believes, or everyone who has faith. Yeshua once wanted to teach that man about faith. It's a very important component for us not to just have a particular knowledge of Messiah and who he is and what he's done, but to have faith in him, steadfast faith in him. Let's read a little bit more Romans chapter 10. Romans 10, 5 and 6. Read 5 and 6 right there.
Romans chapter 10, verse 5. For Moshe writes about the righteousness which is of the Torah, the man who does these shall live by them. But the righteousness of belief speaks in this way. Do not say in your heart, who shall ascend into the heavens, that is, to bring Messiah down.
So with 5 and 6 is kind of a contrast going on there. And so when we look at 5 and 6, to kind of contrast it against each other. For Moses writes about the righteousness which is of the Torah. But in verse 6, it talks about this righteousness that's of faith. And so it's interesting when we think about the things that a lot of times get confused when we look at the writings of Paul. He said over here that in verse 5, for Moses writes about the righteousness which is of the Torah. But because of the fact that he kind of contrasts 5 and 6, it helps us understand when he says the law right there, that he's really talking about the covenant. Because that's one avenue, the covenant. Then there's this other avenue, which is but the righteousness of faith, which is this whole thing that's connected with Yeshua and this new covenant. And so it's interesting when we look at this, these words over here, but we have to be able to look at the context in which he is delivering these things and kind of really have a proper understanding of these things, and understanding that this righteousness that is of faith is kind of not this non-specific kind of just generally speaking faith. It's faith in Messiah, which brings about a connection to the Most High, which brings about the Ruach HaKodesh in your heart, which brings about you walking according to the righteousness of Elohim, which is connected to the law, statutes, commands of the Most High. But all of that being said, when we drop down to verse 10, drop down to verse 10 then.
Okay. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, and so is saved.
Keep going.
Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame.
Faith again. Okay, keep going.
Because there is no distinction between Yehudi and Greek, for the same master of all is rich to all those calling upon him.
13 and 14.
For everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without one proclaiming?
Okay, very good. So we're back to this idea of these hearing and these words that need to be spoken. Okay, it don't talk about miracles over here. It talks about the idea of hearing and proclaiming words so that there can be something to believe in. And so again, when we think about back in John, the issue where that Yeshua has with this person who shouldn't have to actually see these signs and wonders so that he's able to believe. He's desiring for us to be able to have faith, which doesn't necessitate seeing. Like, we want to have something be proven to us, right? If I see it, I believe it. Yeshua later on says that the people who seek signs and wonders there is a wicked generation who seeks signs and wonders. And so it's necessary for us to be able to be connected to this thing that Messiah has for us, to be able to hear these words and believe. He quotes over back in Romans. Read Romans 10 and what'd you read down to 14? Read 15 and 16.
It says, and how shall they proclaim if they are not sent? As it has been written, how pleasant are the feet of those who bring the good news of peace, who bring the good news of the good.
16.
However, not all obeyed the good news, for Yeshayahu says, Yahweh, who has believed our report.
Okay, very good. So there's always been this issue of those not actually, not that the word wasn't going forth, but that you had these doubters, right? These people who I got to see something to believe it. Let's talk about faith. I want to talk more about faith. Let's go over to Hebrews, because the message from the words of the Master is dealing with faith. Dealing with faith and its utmost importance. He didn't say, well, he did say over here, verse 48, except you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. So he did say faith. He did bring up the idea of it. But with, the way in which he did it, he's given us this lesson that's very important for us to be able to understand the importance of faith. And then again, he forces this nobleman, to have to literally walk in faith as he went. So let's go over to Hebrews 11. What's this say? Comments. Yeshua said to him, Tomah, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed. Yes, very good. I mean, because it's one thing to be able to say, yeah, I saw this miraculous thing that happened. And because of that, I believe. But Yeshua himself says, blessed are those who have not seen these miraculous things and yet believed. Read Hebrews 11:1. Hebrews 11, verse 1.
And belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen.
It said that faith is the substance of things that are hoped for. If there's things that are looked forward to with a positive end result, the substance of that thing is faith. The evidence of that thing is not seen. And so when we think about faith in relation to this guy, he had to believe that what Yeshua said he had done was done as he walked back home to see his son, if he was alive or if he wasn't alive. He had a hope, which was that his son was there, alive. Mm-hmm. And I guess the thing that powered his steps, his putting one foot in front of the other, was the fact that Yeshua said that he was going to do what he did, and so therefore it must be done. And so when we think about faith and what it is, there is a strong conviction, convincing that has taken place. If you say that you have faith in Messiah, real faith is it can't be turned around. Nobody could come around and say, I don't know, 5 paragraphs and have you turned around and doubting. If they can, you didn't have faith to begin with. If somebody's able to come in here right now and convince you that Yeshua is a lie, then you didn't believe to begin with, in the definition of what faith is. Because faith is immovable.
Would you say you have to have a certain level of understanding to have an unshakable faith? To say, it's many things to believe out here, and many things that can convince you. So, for instance, like how the scriptures talk about, it brings down strongholds. It can, with all these different things, and the strongholds really are concepts built up in people's minds that would cause them to believe a falsehood or something. So, I personally would feel a person would have to have a certain level of understanding to have an unshakable faith. Because the scripture talk about being tossed to and fro from learning different doctrines and all these different things. Yeah. And so clearly, like when Yeshua was on the scene, he was talking to people who he clearly perceived that their a level of understanding wasn't where it needed to be. To even get upset with him to say, "Come on, y'all And so even them, they were subject to it. So I feel like it goes hand in hand, not only with the spirit, but a certain level of understanding to build your foundation for your faith. So you couldn't be shaken.
Well, I think that the question is really understanding of what exactly. Because there's certain things that I could say that my mind can't scratch the surface into understanding the nature of the Most High in Yeshua. As far as that goes, I don't understand that. It's something that I just can't wrap my mind around. But I don't have to understand that in order to have faith in who Messiah is and what he came to do. So there's certain things that you do have to have understanding about. But then there's certain things that that we'll never understand. And there's certain things that is not necessary for, let's just say, kind of salvation's sake. When we think about the teachings of Messiah, and we'll see as we go through this, he kind of had about 4 main topics that he really talked about. He talked about repentance. He talks about faith a lot, which are not kind of these major kind of weighty things. Now the problem is that people get into all these other things and we place certain amount of importance on these other things, which really can have us, we're to the place of being tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, when we don't really have a firm foundation in things to begin with. And so I think that as far as having an understanding, the thing that we really have to have a firm understanding on is who Yeshua is, what he came to do for us, and then what how we respond to that. And beyond that, everything else is kind of just like icing on the cake.
Right.
It's icing on the cake.
Right.
And beyond it being icing on the cake, it's it's where a lot of people find misplacing importance on things, leading us to the side.
Right.
And so the thing is that we have to be able to have not an unshakable, unmovable faith in, how the calendar is supposed to be
Right,
done,
right.
or an unshakable, movable faith, or whether his name is Yahuwah or Yahweh or whatever, but or Yahweh Shai or Ahaya or whatever. But an unmovable, unshakable faith in the fact that the person who walked the earth that you call Yahweh Shai came and did a particular set of things and requires a particular response from you as a result of it. In that, there must be an unmovable, unshakable faith.
I agree.
Just a comment.
What do we have here? Let's see, go up here. Let's save this. That one there says, Yeshua called a little child to him, set him in the midst, and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become as little children, you shall by no means enter into the reign of Elohim." Yes, he did in fact say that. And so it's interesting that, and so Yeshua really, he wants to build a foundation. And he wants to start from the beginning. And so we can have a particular set of ideas and understandings about things, but if we're all to become as little children, a child is just starting all over again. From the beginning, from scratch, and being built up on a particular set of principles. It's interesting when we think about the people that he's talking to. He talked to regular people, and he talked to learned people. And he had one message for the both of them, all at the same time. And this is an example of that, right? What else he say? Matthew 18:3 says to come as children. Children don't have great understanding, but the ability to hear and desire to obey their parents because they believe and love them. Yeah, coming in the door, right? They don't have they'll gain an understanding,
Right.
But it's not prerequisite. The only prerequisite is to know Elohim. Right, where that's the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of understanding. Even that is a particular, having a particular understanding. Understand who the Most High is and what He's capable of doing as it relates to you. Where these things all begin. But we're saying all that just to say that faith, true faith, is immovable. And it is a necessity, and it is something that it has to go beyond sight. We can look to find reasons from a scientific perspective and try to prove the Bible to be correct. But if you need that in order to establish your faith, I don't know if that's faith. That's not what this is describing here. Faith is the evidence, it's the substance of things hoped for, it's the evidence of things not seen. If I'm scientifically describing a thing, I kind of see it there. It's right there. That's not the thing that he's describing. The Most High calls for us to have this trust in Him who is the invisible Elohim. It says that He's the invisible Elohim in Colossians. Yeshua is the expressed representation of the invisible Elohim. It's interesting when we look at this chapter, Hebrews chapter 11, and it goes through all of the people, Abel, and Enoch, and Noah, and Abraham, all who did all of these things according to faith. And they never seen the Most High. They seen things that He did, right? They saw the results of His power. But when you think about, like, say, Abraham, for instance, the way that he saw the Most High in the binding of Isaac's situation was him just going forward with the word that the Most High gave to him. And while he's literally going and doing the thing that the Most High said for him to be doing, a way of escape comes out of nowhere. So the act of his obedience manifested a proof, let's say, of the Most High that he wouldn't have seen outside of his obedience. And then we could take that back to what we're looking at over in in John chapter 4. That man walked back under the assumption that his son was okay. There was some, I think to me, which is totally natural, I would think that, I have children, I know how I would feel if I go to receive a miracle and then I got to go back in order to find out the results of the miracle. He's asking questions, he's seeing what's going on, he's talking to the people. We are in fact human. But in his humanity, you're able to see kind of where he lacks. Which I think is the reason why we have this here in the first place, so that we're able to learn from it. I want to go over to also the next chapter in Hebrews, which continues in this idea of faith and its importance. Chapter 12, read chapter 12, 1 and 2.
Okay. We too, then, having so great a cloud of witnesses all around us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race set before us.
Okay, so this is interesting because we see all of in 11 we see all of the people, and we hear all of the things, which of course we've never seen. Never seen any of those things. We're supposed to look at those things that we've never seen, and because of the fact that we know that we by faith know that he did all of those things for them, he said, let us lay aside every weight and sin that does so easily beset us, and run with patience the race that's set before us. Because of the fact, over here, the writer here is calling for us to walk in an unmovable, true faith. Because we heard about these things that the Most High has done previously, and because of those things, lay aside every weight and sin that does so easily beset you. Verse 2.
Verse 2. Looking to the Prince and Perfecter of our belief, Yeshua, who for the joy that was set before him endured the stake, having despised the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim.
Okay, very good. So on top of all the things that we see in Scripture of the Most High doing all that he's done for his people, we have Yeshua, who is, as it says, the author and finisher of our faith, who went through what he went through for us. And so because of all of that, we're able to walk in faith. The thing that actually Yeshua is calling for us to do through this whole thing with this nobleman from Galilee. And so, from a practical kind of a standpoint, understanding that the importance of faith, again, Yeshua, the master teacher, Yeshua, the author and finisher of our faith. Yeshua, we don't find necessarily these intense theological breakdowns given by Messiah. What we see is things like repentance, What we see is things like faith. And so it's necessary for us to be able to not only understand the importance of these things in ourselves, but because if we don't have a real kind of handle on what real faith really is, how are we able to walk in it? If we don't really understand that real faith is being fully persuaded about a thing, can we really be truly persuaded if we don't know that we're even supposed to be fully persuaded? Like if you have a thought in your mind that there was something potentially that could happen, that could cause you to doubt the validity of Messiah, I'm saying that's an issue. Because faith is about stability. And it's about being fully persuaded. Unshakable, unmovable. The disciples of Messiah at times come before Yeshua and have these kind of doubting, things that they allow to come out of their mouths, and Yeshua, rebukes these people talking about calling them Satan. And so we have to be able to understand the importance of what faith is. And so I think that from these words here in John chapter 4, as far as I'm concerned, I think that this is the message. This is the thing that Messiah is teaching to these people, causing the thing that caused him to speak was the fact that these people who should have known, these people that were from the place where the people were more in tune with the actual customs of the people. They study the scriptures. They understand who the true and living Elohim in fact is, but they lacked in the most important thing, which is understanding faith. And so we, as believers, it's what we even call ourselves, faithers. How much more so should our faith actually be? Do you think about the fact that you sit up there and call yourself a believer, but at times your faith is lacking? Like, think about a thing that you classify yourself as, whatever classifications that you want to think about it, whether it be a boy or a girl. What could happen to cause you to what could cause you to think that, am I a boy? Am I a girl? If we come to the place of classifying ourselves as this or that, can you be moved from that? Not in the way that we live. We live in a twisted world where these people can even cause you to doubt, you know, your very immovable classifications, right? But how much more so is this thing that we classify ourselves as believers in the Most High, and yet have these moments, seconds of doubt? The two things aren't really congruent with one another. Okay, does anybody have any last questions, comments before we...
I think that what you're saying is about the belief thing. At the end, it says that his family and him believed. And so it's like they got that lesson. And I mean, it probably would have been better if he just believed on, you know, the strength that they said his son was healed, but he wanted to know down to the minute when that happened.
Yeah.
But I mean, just even the audacity to try to get him to go to that place, like it was far. It was the next day that he even ran into people that was coming to him to tell him.
Yeah, he probably turned straight around.
Yes.
And it was a day later, right?
Was not. It was a day later. So he was expecting for the Messiah to come all the way wherever he was at. By the time he would have gotten there, the child would have been dead, probably.
Yeah.
So it's there gotta be you gotta have faith.
And I think that we can talk about the lack that was with the nobleman, but perhaps the way that it played out was for the purposes of the rest of his house. For him to go and not to happen, and then him to come back and he has that story now to tell. Now he has a word for the rest of the people there. And so when we think about, you know, the strength even of your faith and your ability to walk steadfastly in faith, where the scriptures talk about us being a walking and living epistles. And so people are able to look at your faith and say, wow, how is it that you're able to be thus and so in this situation? It's helpful for others, it's helpful for you first and foremost to be steadfast in faith. But it's helpful for others who are able to look at faith manifest in you, you know, for them to be able to. The equivalent of Messiah walking around and performing all these miracles is people being able to look at you and see you as a walking miracle. People who, you know, knew you when, who you were and who you became. And so, you know, it's important for us to be able to, you know, have an established faith in ourselves, not only for ourselves, but also for all those that see us. Go ahead.
So when your faith be strengthened by the trials that you live, it seemed like this trial wasn't suddenly it.
Yeah.
What he thought he had as faith, he questioned. That's why he was wanted to know the hour. Because to me, it seemed like he was checking to see, well, I asked him this time when the son was here. So what time was it when this actually happened to my child? So when he was able to compare those two, that solidified more the faith that he thought he had.
Yeah.
It actually made it strong because of that trial that he had. So, and the testimony that he has now to give to those people who actually probably think a lot like he was thinking. And now he could share the testimony, which increased his faith through that trial.
Yeah.
So I think that to say that we have to have an unwavering, unshakable faith, that unwavering, unshakable faith comes because of that, those trials.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there are few of us who are believers in this life who haven't gone through trials, because this life is trials. So going through those trials and hanging on to that, you may have a modicum of faith, but that trial may increase that modicum so much, so that when people do look at you, they're looking at that faith now that has grown.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they know from where you came, but they also know of the trial. Those people who were coming to meet him knew he was going to look for this person that could save his son.
Yeah.
So they knew where he came from. I don't know if your faith can become so unwavering without a trial. Because now that tests your faith. Then that test increases your faith. So to say that my faith will grow because of the trial that I'm in. Without that trial, I may, as a human, as a mortal, don't realize where my faith is at. Well, I have this faith. I am a believer. But then when you're put to the test, that faith then now becomes the substance of what you say, things unseen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't see my faith grow until there's a trial, because I don't think of my faith as something that has to be grown until I'm put to the test, because for me, I'm walking in my faith. But once that trial comes, not only do I have to walk in it, I have to believe in my faith, whether I can see him, hear him, touch him. I have to believe that exists. And as he brings you through, your faith is increased.
Yeah.
And what people see is that increased faith in you.
Yeah, we see that in the story, right? He had a particular faith that brought him there to begin with, but he gets checked, I guess, and then he gets tried. But he's tried because now he got to go a day's journey away on the word of what the master said. And so you see that in the story. If, it's part of the situation. We looked at Hebrews chapter 11 and 12. It says all that just to say, don't grow weary in well-doing. It continues on in saying that. Because, look at all of the things that Yeshua has done. When have you been tested unto blood? You're still walking around. And so, if we all have to be as little children, we all at the same time have to grow. We don't just magically become perfect, but the word perfect, at least in the New Testament, is mature, which is a process. All I'm saying is that we have to understand what the end result is and walk in that. When you don't grow, that's called something stunted. Your growth is stunted, right? That's a problem. You're dead when you stop growing, right? And so it's part of the process to always be moving forward. But there certainly are things, though, that must be immovable right now. Like whether the fact of who Messiah is and what he came to do for you. I there's no, there can't be any wavering in that. We talk about his ability to do this or that is when, it gets shaky sometimes, because we get into these situations where we've never been in this particular situation before, and now we have to trust him in a way that we've never trusted him before. Where sometimes we waver, which he doesn't want for us to waver, but as humans we may, but we don't have to. And if we think about things the way that he would have for us too, there's nowhere that says that we have to waver and fall. If we fall, we can get back up. But you don't have to fall. If I plan for something wrong to happen, imagine your life if that's the way that you deal with things, where you're thinking about what if this happens or what if that happens. You plan for success. If something is to have happened, you know what to do as a result. But I'm not planning for the mistake to happen. I'm planning for perfection. I'm shooting for the actual mark. As I'm shooting for the mark, I might miss, but I'm not trying to miss, I'm trying to hit it, right? And so we have to strive for perfection, and knowing that as we're aiming for that thing, we want to hit the bullseye. But sometimes, you're looking at the wrong eye, or the wind blows a certain way, right? But the goal is to hit the bullseye. The goal is to walk in perfection, knowing that if you so happen to miss, there can be correction. Okay, very good. That's very good. We must, by the way, expect trials, by the way. Expect them, because they're coming. If they ain't coming, it's only because they haven't came yet, but they're on the way. I'm just saying that. If your life is perfect, you're probably in gross iniquity. I'm just going to say that. Okay. Okay. So, that being said, we are going to be done for now. We have coming up, since we're getting close to the 7th month, we have our, I'm going to put that up on the thing there for all of the dates for our feasts, gatherings. Everybody should be having the feast times on your mind. So we have all of our dates and things for the upcoming feasts and times. We'll put that up on the site there. If you have any questions, you can look at we have them on the site, we have them on the
These are the celebrations. Just the celebrations. We'll hold a video for the dates.
Okay, for all of our local dates and times we have here on the things for trumpets, atonement, and tabernacles. And so, go ahead and refer to that. We'll put that up on the site, and hopefully some people that are seeing this will actually be here physically. If not, we'll have the various streams for some of these. I don't know what Tabernacles is going to be like this year in terms of live things. We'll make recordings, probably have to upload them after because of the wilderness
situation.
Internet situation. Okay.
Now,
All right.
we're not going to be in the internet.
Huh?
Not where we're at.
No, there's no internet yet. So live streams for Tabernacles is going to be out, but there will be recordings that will come shortly after the live time. Well, I don't know how shortly because I don't know how long it's going to take to upload.
Yeah, it depends, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but anyway. All right, so for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Y'all willing?
Shabbat
We'll
Shalom.
be back on next Shabbat.